Alright, hey everyone, we're gonna start to talk about Special Project 2. Um, what I was assigned was the certain nonverbal signs of deception. The three nonverbal signs were personal space, artifacts, and voice. So go along with that, just to start it out, we're gonna talk about our purpose statement. The big takeaway from this is that nonverbal signs of deception help employers and managers to know whether they can trust employees or potential employees. These nonverbal signs are really used in all aspects of our life, whether it be work, it will be used personal life, it'll be used in relationships. All these things are affected by nonverbal signs of communication. Nonverbal communication is huge. It sometimes can be bigger than simply verbal communication due to leakage, things like that. The things that we really are trying to say may come out through our nonverbal signs, such as with our voice, the things that we put up around our office, how we stand, body language, all those things are really important. Start us off, personal space, it's something that's pretty difficult to control consciously. It's kind of how you stand around somebody, the proximity you are to them, how close you are, how far away, are you slouching, are your arms crossed, things along those lines. Moving on, artifacts. It's the things, if you were to walk into somebody's office, what do they have around? Are they hanging up pictures of their family? Do they have quotes from the Bible? Do they have things that project who they are onto you that are nonverbal? Again, they tell you something about them that they're not saying. Moving on, voice. It's kind of a weird thing because our voice is verbal, but there are nonverbal signs within that come along with that. So that's our pitch, tone, volume, how high, how low, onset, how long it takes us to reply, and the duration of how long we reply. Moving on to those main points, personal space, a pretty basic definition. The proxemics is relating the distance that one keeps from others as well as one's relation to the surrounding environment. So when we think about that, everybody has a baseline, right? We have a baseline of how we act around people, how close we get to people, things like that. So if you've been around this person a while, you can have a baseline, a feel for them, and they start, I have athletes that I know how they typically act around me. But if they start to act in a certain way, they start to act really reserved when typically they're outgoing, or they simply just aren't speaking, and I know they talk a lot, or the opposite. They seem to be hiding something through that personal space, whether they either want to come up to me right away or they want to back off. It kind of gives me a feel for what I'm going to get out of that person that day. So that's kind of the personal space. You got to get that baseline and just try to feel out what you're getting from that person that day. Moving on, talking about artifacts. On my desk, I have a cross because I believe that Christ is really important in my life, and I want people to know that. I have workout sheets on there. I want people to know that. I am always giving out my workouts, always having them around me. I'm always looking at them, things like that. But things that I don't think about that are on my desk, it can be messy at times. And maybe that shows that I'm not very organized. Maybe that shows people that I don't care very much about my desk space. But that's not true. But it could tell them about that. But if you think about a more typical example, if you think about a salesman and they're trying to project to you that they're an honest person, that they're a great person, they picture of a family, little kids, Bible verses, a cross, things like that kind of maybe give you that stereotypical cultural view of, hey, I'm a good person, you should trust me, things like that. So yeah, that's kind of a nonverbal cue from what you get from people in terms of the artifacts they have around them. Moving on to the last one, we talk about somebody's voice. Again, something that's really hard for people to control. So if you, again, have a baseline for how somebody typically responds to you and how they respond to you initially, whether it's honest or not, which it typically is, so you should know that how they respond when they speak honestly. They might be slower, it could be less specific, they might draw themselves out a lot. When it comes to my athletes again, I have kids that I have a baseline feel for when they're telling the truth, and if they're not telling the truth, it's typically is one of those things. They might like stutter, they might kind of just look around, they might not make eye contact with me. That's a big one. Things like that. Their pitch might change a little bit. I guess I'm harder to pick up on that one, but more of the drawn out answers, long thinking, things like that. So all three of those things, when we think about our personal space, our artifacts, our voice, all three of those nonverbal cues are really going to go into, they're really going to go into what we, how we read people, how we start to understand whether they're lying to us, whether they are an honest person. Can we trust this employee? Are they somebody that we are going to be able to hire in the future, promote, especially when it comes to an interview. These things pop up in an interview. I don't think we'd want to hire those people. I think you typically want honest people around you, of course. But kind of to review, I think the biggest thing is that these things are really important, but we should remember that they do have their limitations, but it can be very individualized. It's a baseline. You shouldn't always treat everybody the same. You should understand that there's a baseline, that it's individualized, that things aren't always going to be the same when it comes to these cues. So when we talk also about our personal space, remember it's a proximity, how close somebody stands to you, how their body language reacts that day, get that baseline feel. Artifacts, more concrete, what are they hanging up around their office? Do they have certain things in their car? Just a lot of things you can try to get their feel for them, and it is situational. It's going to be different from a salesman to your best friend, your coworker at work that you might know a little better. So those things are going to, whether it's deceptive or not, might be more situational. And also listen to, again, somebody's voice. That might be one you hear a lot about with their pitch, their tone, how sharp are they talking to you, are they drawing their answers out, things like that. These are all things we should be looking for when we think of our nonverbal cues. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys. I hope this kind of explained those three nonverbal cues a little bit better to you. And thank you. Bye.